Okie dokie. So let's get started, everybody. Welcome tonight to the ECE webinar series. Very happy that you are here. My name is Mary Moose, and I am the Department Chair for Early Childhood Education and Human Services with Rasmussen University. And I host these sessions and sometimes present them. And so I'm excited tonight to have a couple of guest presenters coming to us from ProSolutions. And so we'll introduce them in just a moment. Let me give you some background information first. So oh my goodness, that just jumped way ahead. Okay, so let me give you some background information first. I can't have you all here without telling you about Rasmussen's Early Childhood Education degree programs. We do have a very extensive and supportive website that I encourage you to visit. If you are looking to extend your education into a permanent degree, or if you have employees that are looking to do so, please have them check out Rasmussen. We just like to be on the table as an option for those of you looking for a fully online early childhood education degree or CDA preparation classes. So take a look. Let us know if you've got any questions. The program, I should say the admissions advisors are very helpful and can answer just about any question that you have regarding your opportunity. We do have an information session. We do these monthly, and if you visit our website, you'll be able to sign up for an information session. The next one is not next Tuesday. It's the Tuesday before Thanksgiving at 8 p.m. Where you'll get a chance to talk with me. So I come on the call. Sometimes we have just a very few participants. Sometimes we have a bigger group, but we try to tailor it to who's on the call. So if you're looking for information about a bachelor completer degree, then that's what we talk more about. If you're looking for information about an associate degree, then that's what we talk about. So we really try our best to answer all of your questions at these sessions. So if you have people that are interested, have them sign up to attend an upcoming information session and get all their questions answered. Oh, it keeps jumping ahead. I apologize. Another exciting thing is that we have this amazing alliance partnership with ProSolutions Training. So our guests this evening, our amazing presenters, are ProSolutions. I mean, this is an amazing opportunity to be able to take knowledge that you have, potentially previous education, even your CDA credential, and transfer it all into, or articulate it all into, I can't talk tonight, into an early childhood education degree. So if you are a ProSolutions training member, participant, and you have attended a ProSolutions training, you need to provide your transcript of your trainings that you've taken through ProSolutions, and you could save up to 35% on your early childhood education degree. So I encourage you to take a look at that. If you need more information on that, really simple, you go to rasmussen.edu/ProSolutions, and you'll get a web page, a landing page with more information and an email of who you can contact for all those detailed questions that you might have. Magda, fantastic, fantastic. You need to email me, Magda, okay? And we'll get you set up for, or I'll get you connected to, actually, you know what, you can email your advisor, Magda, and they'll be able to get that to the right people. Look at that, we've got people from Tennessee joining us too. That's fantastic, we're very excited. So we are very proud of this relationship with ProSolutions, and we hope that you take a look at their amazing online training opportunities in topics that just, kind of cover the books on everything you need to know, as well as some really cool stuff you want to know about early childhood education. Okay, so you are in a WebEx classroom. So this is a WebEx training space, and a couple of things to help you out as we go through this. You have been muted to avoid background noise. We know you're at home, there's children, there's dogs, there's television, there's all kinds of stuff hopefully going on around you. And we want to make sure that you have a chance to really listen to the presentation as well as your peers to be able to listen to the presentation. We do recommend using your computer speakers and your microphone, but we also know that you might need to call in using your phone. And you can switch between the two depending on what kinds of reception you're getting. So sometimes if the internet is twerky or if your phone reception is quirky, then you can switch between them. You can also, if you need to, if something's going wonky with your internet or something happens with your computer and you need to log out and log back in, sometimes that hard reset makes a big difference. difference with your connectivity. We're going to also keep video to a minimum. Our presenters will share their video screens with you to start off, but then we're going to turn those off to really be sensitive to bandwidth. And especially with weather issues going on, sometimes bandwidth can be affected by tumultuous weather. So we want to make sure that we give you guys the best experience we can. Add questions or comments in the chat box. So you'll want to go ahead and put those comments in the chat. Make sure you say send to all participants so that we can help answer your question. We can benefit from your wisdom and your comments, and even make sure that your presenters are seeing your comments and questions carefully. All right, so you will get an hour of in-service awarded. So regardless of your educational level, you are here to benefit from this information tonight. And we want to give you that opportunity to document that you participated today. And actually, it should say 1.5 hours of in-service. I realized I forgot to change that because this session is scheduled for 1.5 hours to give us plenty of time to get through the subject and answer questions that you might have. This certificate will arrive in your email box within 48 business hours of this session. Usually they will arrive on Friday afternoon, but sometimes it takes until Monday. You'll want to make sure you check the email that you used to sign up and register for this session. And also check your junk or spam folder. So if you don't see it come through your regular folder, some emails are super sensitive and send everything to junk and spam. And so you'll want to check there to be able to find it. If you still can't find it and it's the end of the day on Monday and you still haven't received it, feel free to email me and I'd be glad to help you locate it or get a new one sent to you so that you can have that documentation. All right. I don't want to take too much more time because these ladies have some great stuff to share with you. I want to welcome our presenters from ProSolutions Training, Denise Payton and Erica Goldthorp. So Denise and Erica, let's make sure you guys have sound.
Good evening.
Good evening, Denise.
Good afternoon. We're so glad to be here.
Oh, is it evening or afternoon? Oh my gosh, the difference in perspective there. Oh my goodness.
Maybe. I think we're getting close to good night.
Right. I know it's been dark here since about 4 o'clock, so it's this time of year is crazy town. So thank you so much, ladies, for presenting today. I'm going to let them introduce themselves. I'm going to switch to do some stuff here, and I'm going to give them the ball, as they say, which means that we make them the presenters, and I think I'm giving this, if I remember right, to Denise.
Yes, and I'm looking for the little arrows.
Yes, they should be they should show up at the top. Did the ball get given to you? It should be. Sometimes this takes a little bit of.
Well, while we're
yeah, go ahead, and I'm gonna figure out why this ball's not allowing me to give it to you, and then we'll figure that out.
So Erica can tell them some cool things. But good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Denise Payton. As Mary said, I am on the instructional design team at ProSolutions Training, and I'm presenting tonight with my senior manager, Erica Goldthorp.
Thank you. And I'm just turning my camera on just for a second, and then we'll turn it right back off when we get started. But as Denise said, I'm Erica Goldthorp. I'm the Director of Product Development and Instructional Design with ProSolutions Training. And we are so happy to be here. We are so happy to share this information. And we are also very happy to have a partnership with Rasmussen and to be able to offer articulation with the CDA curriculum and our training into an associate degree with Rasmussen. And we're also really happy that we can provide such an incredible tuition discount as well for that coursework. So, you know, if you are looking into earning credentials and degrees in ECE and you just want to get started, a CDA is a great first step, as the CDA Council says, to get that first credential and then certainly continue on into an associate degree to continue your education path in ECE. So we are very excited about that partnership, and we're happy to be here with you tonight, this afternoon, to share this information. So
Whatever time of day it is, that we're happy to be.
That's what it is.
You may be. I know it's morning and some for some of our participants. So
right.
Okay, so here's the interesting thing is that for some reason it wants to challenge Erica with the PowerPoint because it will not let me make Denise, it will not let me change your status, and I don't understand why. So it likes Erica. So I have changed it to Erica as the leader of the PowerPoint.
Oh my goodness.
So we'll all have to make sure that she stays on track. So
I have faith in you.
Oh dear.
So let me go ahead and I'm going to mute myself. Do you see the little PowerPoint arrows at the top of the screen, Erica?
I do see some tiny arrows beside a box that's counting slides, I presume. So
you've got it. Absolutely.
Okay.
That's the one.
Okay, well, I'm going to turn my camera off now so I can focus on these arrows. Okay. So for today, here are our goals for learning. And so first, we are going to identify brain state characteristics and how they affect the way we communicate. We are going to identify ways to mindfully communicate with others based on their brain state. And then we are also going to examine how mindful relationships and mindful communication is beneficial in supporting equitable relationships. So we hope you leave today with some very real-world, tangible tools that you can use in your own personal and professional lives to communicate more mindfully with those that you are interacting with on a daily basis. And certainly equity is a hot topic right now. It has always been a pronounced need in virtually every arena of our society. So today we want to help show you how mindful communication can really help to build relationships and increase the work of equity through these stronger relationships. So with that, we will get started. And I will also mention throughout the presentation, we will ask you several different times to type responses into that chat box. So as Mary said, please make sure you're sending to all participants so we can see your answers and your thoughts as we move throughout this session.
Awesome. Okay, so I think I'm up, and we just really want to do this kind of quickly into the chat. Let us know what your roles are. So you have a couple of examples: team member, supervisor, manager, other types of leaders, administrators, just to kind of get a pulse. And also, I saw a few questions about the getting a copy of the PowerPoint. We did send that, and Mary will have that. She can give you information on where you guys can get that as well. Oh, nice, college instructor.
They're going so fast.
I know. I'm not. Did you see the pause? Did you hear me pause? So lots of teachers. We have parents, early Head Start teachers, directors. I love that there are parents in here who are getting information on how to support their children. That's amazing. Mental health supporters, home care providers. Nice. All right, well, thank you guys so much, and continue to put it in. We'll keep monitoring that between Erica and I and Mary at the end, as well as any questions you have. Just pop those in, and we'll monitor those and get to them at the end, okay? All right, Erica.
You're probably going to have to remind me the whole session to change the slide.
I've got you covered.
Okay. So we'll start out by talking about the brain states. And if any of you are familiar with conscious discipline, Denise and I love conscious discipline. You know, it's eye-opening and incredible when you're using it in the classroom. We use it with our own children, and you'll see here how it's also relevant for adults that you are interacting with. So these brain states do come from the conscious discipline approach, and Dr. Becky Bailey is the author or the creator of the conscious discipline approach. We love her, and she shares 3 very specific brain states that influence the way we see the world, which is our individual unique perspective. Also our behaviors and our reactions, and the way that we communicate to others. And these brain states are known as the survival state, the emotional state, and the executive state. So ideally, you know, we want to communicate from that executive state and operate from that state at all times, if we can. That's what we're working with children on. We're working with children to build those executive functioning skills so that they can also operate from that executive state. But, you know, as our daily lives go on and we go through multiple changes and events throughout the day, throughout the hour, throughout the minute sometimes, you know, in different situations, those brain states can fluctuate. And this really affects our perspective on the world around us. So, you know, as professionals working together in a professional environment, when we're being mindful of these brain states, it's very helpful, you know, in not only making sure we communicate effectively, but also in helping us to become better listeners. And if you know anything about conscious discipline, it's all about how you are reacting to children, not what the children are doing. It's your reaction to their behaviors, and, you know, how we can move them along in these brain states based on our reactions. And the same is true when we're interacting with any other adult or any other person in our daily lives. And so, you know, what we want to talk about here is how listening to others is really one of the very first basic steps that we can take to support the creation of more equitable environments. So we'll go now and look at each of these individual brain state characteristics. And so just, you know, some vocabulary, some backing up to some of the basics here. You know, communication is the exchange of information or news using a system of common symbols or behaviors. And so that sounds very simple. But we know that there are a lot of factors that go into how we share and how we receive information. And understanding the brain states and connecting them to mindful communication strategies is helpful in creating genuine connection and supporting equity. So let's look at the characteristics of each brain state and how each one really determines how we communicate. Okay, so first up, we have the survival state. And the survival state is all about needing to feel safe and secure. And those of you who are teachers and directors and you're working daily with children, these are, you know, children who are operating in that survival state are children often who have been exposed to trauma, who've had, you know, negative experiences in their lives. And these are your children who are hypervigilant, they might be aggressive, they might have meltdowns often, and that's because they are operating from that survival state. They are focused on safety before they can focus on learning, and before they can focus on regulating their emotions, and before they can focus on, you know, those higher order thought processes and skills and executive functioning. They're operating from that survival state. And so in a professional world, people operating from that survival brain state often express themselves in ways that could be aggressive, either verbally or physically. We certainly hope not physical aggression, but it can happen, or by constantly reacting defensively to comments or feedback. And as I said, with children, the goal when addressing this brain state is to create an environment where they feel safe enough to stop worrying about survival. So that's the first thing that we have to deal with children, is getting them to a state where all of their basic needs are met and they feel safe so that they are ready to open their brains up to other avenues and for learning and for interacting with others. And self-regulating with their emotions. And this allows them to use their brains for more effective communication and problem solving because they're not so worried about their safety and having their basic needs met. So we're going to go to the chat box here for just a minute. And here's your question. What do you think might be some reasons or situations that would cause a professional in ECE, in the training field, in mental health, parents, to operate from that survival brain state? And we'll take just a few minutes to let some of those chats come in.
I mean, one thing that we've talked about for as far as adults in the professional setting is people who may have had like a bad like work experience, like in a prior office situation, and then them kind of taking that survival state where, you know, maybe they had to scrounge or work really hard in that space, and so it's not easy for them to trust or to feel like they're safe in their position, and so that comes out a lot in their reactions. Let's see, we see stress, anxiety, trauma. We all have trauma. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Personal issues, so things that have happened to your coworkers, deaths in the family, taking care of older parents or children or family members who may have disabilities or health issues, and just everyday stressors. Very true. So these are all things that people can bring in or have in their background that are causing them to really just stay in a space of reactionary behavior and not, you know, really be able to use that problem-solving front part of your brain, you know, that prefrontal cortex situation. So good job. Thank you, guys.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. And I'm also seeing an interesting one that was lack of experience in the field, which I think is a really profound, you know, we think trauma and, you know, very negative experiences, and certainly if you are lacking experience in the field and suddenly you're thrown into a classroom and you're supposed to manage behaviors and teach children and keep everyone safe and you don't have those tools, for sure that is a reason that you would be operating from that survival state. So that's interesting. Thank you. That's a good one.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, so next up is the emotional state. And the emotional state revolves around a sense of appreciation and belonging. And many companies and work environments are really starting to focus on the impact of workplace culture and how that affects productivity. Certainly, I think the pandemic has really brought that to light a lot lately with our work environments, and when we talk about self-care and the importance of self-care and companies really supporting that for their employees, and creating a workplace culture that fairly and regularly works to support all employees is because when workers feel they belong to the group and that their work is appreciated, that's how you form stronger relationships within your work environment. And these stronger relationships really lay the groundwork for thoughtful and effective communication, which is really at the heart of any successful business. We know relationships and communications, those are just the two essential building blocks of, you know, virtually everything, especially when we're in ECE. And so employees who tend to go above and beyond to unreasonable extents, or who might push back against working with members of their teams, or they might push back against others in their organization, in their center, in their school. These are folks who are probably operating from that emotional brain state. So we're going to go to the chat again and hear your thoughts. So take a few seconds now to type in and tell us, what are some possible examples of professionals who would be operating from this emotional brain state? So maybe these could be, you know, experiences that you've had with coworkers in the past. So what are some of those examples of someone who might be operating from the emotional brain state?
And just think, emotional brain state means desire to connect, right? So that's kind of, how does that show up in the workplace, or how can it show up in the workplace? And we have a couple of examples. like maybe someone who constantly apologizes for things even though nobody said anything is wrong. You know, they haven't done anything wrong, nobody's expressed it, but they're constantly just in this place of, I'm so sorry, you know, in that bid for connection. Someone who's struggling with self-esteem, coming into a new environment. Yeah. Yes, people. We have children need connection all the time. We all need connection, right? To feel safe enough to have these really professional and kind of executive conversations, like we'll talk about a little bit more. When you don't feel connected, we're going to kind of fill in that gap with our behaviors some sort of way. So trying to do everything perfectly, someone who overthinks. Yeah, needing constant validation. Yeah, that's huge. Very
Perfectionist, good. Yeah. So these are all examples of operating from that emotional brain state where you just want connection. And children, if you think about children, this is often children who may misbehave because it gets a reaction. It's getting, you know, someone's paying attention and they're getting that feedback. And it doesn't really matter that it might be negative. It's just an interaction. So the same is true with adults as well. Okay, so we'll move on now and talk about the executive state. And this is the brain state where we all ideally want to operate from at any given moment. So this is where we are at our best. We are doing our most rational, thoughtful, logical problem solving at this executive state. And this is what guides us to good resolutions, good solutions to any issues that we might encounter. And this executive brain is the mindful and intentional area of our brain. And this takes the pause and plan approach to communication and regularly uses the active listening tool for better understanding. So professionals who are operating from the executive brain state have an inner speech, or you may have heard it called your inner monologue, where you're talking to yourself. And those who have this executive brain state are operating from that state, their inner speech is positive and it's uplifting and it's encouraging. They're telling themselves positive affirmations and you know, they're speaking positive things to themselves. And this inner speech is really just, you know, the way that we talk to ourselves, especially when we're in moments of miscommunication or failure or conflict. And I know myself personally, I have the worst case scenario mind always. So, you know, my inner speech is always, oh my goodness, I hope they didn't misunderstand me. I hope they didn't take that the wrong way. That's not how I meant it. And so when we're really in that executive brain state, our inner speech is calm. It's helping us think through these situations. We're approaching things with a clear head, and we're focused on the resolution and not all the other stuff in between. And the executive brain can only be reached by a mindful approach. So this takes practice. It's not easy to operate often from that executive state. Just like with children, that's the goal of everything we're doing, is to help them get to that or get those skills to be able to operate at the executive state. And the same is true for adults. This is something that really just takes practice to be able to be conscious enough of your own behavior and your own thoughts and your own interactions with others to know how to get yourself to that executive state.
Okay, I think this is still you, Erica.
Okay.
You get to do the game.
All righty, so we have another little poll here, so we will answer into the chat box here. Let's see. So, okay, so we're going to look at 3 scenarios, and we're going to try to figure out which one is someone who might be operating from the emotional brain state. And remember, emotional brain state is all about connection. And so number 1 is members of various workplace teams work together to create a presentation for a national conference. Number 2 is an employee becomes upset and storms out of a meeting when another employee asks them why they chose a particular email program from the company to use. something that's not really a, big deal. And number 3 is a coworker regularly expresses regret, says things like, I wish I could have done more, or I wish I could have done better, to every employee about the choice of workplace decor that was put up for a birthday. Although everyone is happy and everyone's surprised, no one has really expressed any issues with the birthday party. So which one do you think of those 3 scenarios would be operating from the emotional brain state?
Whoop, here they come. I think you guys are overwhelmingly correct.
Yeah, I'm seeing lots of 3s. So that's great. Yeah, so number 3 is your example. And this is someone who, it's a little thing, it doesn't mean anything. But they want that connection. And so, they're constantly apologizing or, feeling.
What did someone say earlier? Looking for validation or constant validation. So this is kind of an example of that too.
Exactly. Yeah. So good job. Good job.
All right. So mindful communication strategies. So we know that communicating with others can be tough sometimes, and one of the biggest barriers is the mismanagement of our own emotions, right? So often when we begin to communicate, we'll go into the conversation with preconceived notions about what we want to say and about how it will be received based on how we communicate. We also have or tend to have an idea about how we think the other person is going to receive this information without considering the fact that they might communicate in a style that's different from ours, right? So if we're speaking to a person with a communication style or personality, or someone who is operating from a different brain state than we are, that communication can come across very much differently than we thought, So this is where mindfulness comes in. So mindful communication allows us space to really consider our audience before sharing our communication and while it's happening. And that can help us avoid those stumbling blocks that we have towards understanding each other. Okay, so let's go, our next slide, we'll start with a question. What is mindfulness? And I know we've, probably heard this a lot in the last 2 years or so, especially after this last interesting year and a half. But in the chat box, just kind of type in some quick buzzwords, phrases. What is mindfulness? And as you do that, I'll just kind of pop back in and out. But perfect. Focusing on the present moment, right? So mindfulness researcher Ellen Langer, she writes that mindfulness is a flexible state of mind in which we are actively engaged in the present, noticing new things, and we're sensitive to the context, which I think is really important. So in the context of effective communication, noticing new things and being sensitive to the context are really valuable in making sure communication comes from our executive brain state and that the messages are communicated and heard as intended. These are really good. Being aware of your surroundings, being in the present, being in your body. Good. So when we communicate mindfully, that means observing without judgment, right? Listening first before forming a response, right? Active listening. And asking questions to understand, not to undermine, which is really important. Mindful communication strategies involve a balance of noticing where we are in the present moment, of attempting communication from how our bodies are feeling to our current brain state, and noticing those same things in the other person, So now that we have a decent idea of the brain states, let's look at some mindful strategies to help us communicate more intentionally in our workplace. So first up is survival state. And Mary, we did have a question in the chat that I wanted to put a pin in. Can you be in both mind states or more than one brain state at the same time? So I just want to put a pin in that and come back to it at the end. But I did see
Got it.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay. So people operating from a survival brain state typically come across as aggressive or overly defensive, right? And so while work concerns may be part of that, there could also be personal influences as well. So one of the first things or one of the first steps to take when you're talking to someone who's operating in that survival brain state is to recognize that it's happening and Q-tip, right? Quit taking it personal. So there's this book that I love, live by, recommend to everyone. It's called The 4 Agreements, and it's by Don Miguel Ruiz. And so in this book, He describes not taking it personally as one of 4 things that we can do in our lives that help get us out of our heads and help us extend grace to the people around us. So Don Ruiz shares that when we assume others' actions have to do with us, i.e. we're taking it personally, we're basically telling ourselves that everything, even other people's behaviors, revolve around us, right? So understanding that everything isn't always about us is a skill that takes very intentional and mindful practice to develop, but it works wonders at changing how we perceive the world and how we perceive others' actions. Maintaining your composure or self-regulation, right? We talk about that a lot with children especially, is also a mindful skill that is developed over time. Composure is our ability to stay calm when faced with heavy, surprising, or other emotionally triggering situations, right? So when someone in a survival state reacts defensively, I would never, why do you think I would do that? Those kinds of comments. Why are you picking on me? Or if they're aggressive, I don't want to talk about this, get out of my office, right? It becomes important for the person initiating the conversation to remain calm and in control of their executive brain. Mindfulness is a process that is built over time and is like any other muscle, and it has to be exercised regularly to become strong, okay? So to start, just sit for a moment and think about what coworker behaviors are triggering to you. So we're going to take this example through these strategies and kind of use them to help you formulate an idea of how they can be used, right? So think of something, maybe make a list, pop a few in the chat. What are some triggering coworker behaviors? Okay. And as you're writing these down or you're sharing them in the chat, I want you to think about what you tell yourself when you experience these triggers. Okay, for example, I might have the trigger that people, or I might have the trigger of people turning their back on me, like when I'm coming into their office to talk to them, right? So they don't turn around or they don't physically acknowledge that I'm talking. Okay, what I tell myself in my head could be, oh, they don't respect me enough to turn around and look me in the eye, right? This sentence, this perspective creates a story about the other person's motives, and that will fuel how I respond to them, right? So instead, try to replace that statement with something more positive. For example, instead of me saying, oh, I feel like they're disrespecting me, maybe I tell myself, oh, maybe they didn't hear me, let me speak a little bit louder, or maybe they're finishing up some work and they want to get their thoughts out before they forget. And each of these statements pushes me into a different way of seeing the situation, which then allows me to extend more grace in the moment, right? That's what keeping composure is about, being able to extend grace, not make it so much about you, and being able to think that other people may have other things going on in their life, right? So obviously, though, okay, there will be times when coworkers will continuously exhibit disrespectful behavior, and that will affect the work relationship, and obviously, that will need to be addressed. But the goal here is just to kind of share some personal tools that can help you move towards more mindful and equitable working relationships, okay? So maintaining composure when you're talking to someone in a survival state. Keep your calm. And our next strategy is called the pivot, okay? If you've ever seen or, played basketball, you may have noticed that there's this move where a player will plant one foot on the ground and then they'll use the other foot to change positions. And they usually do this to avoid, like a travel penalty, or to really just give them some time to assess like what they want to do with the next play. This is also true when working on being a mindful communicator. So it's important for us to remember that every single person, including us, has triggering moments. And when this happens, we start to tell ourselves a story that creates a version of the situation in our heads related to the trigger. Now, that may not be actually happening, but having that perspective, that story, it dictates how we react and can either make the difference in the conversation being really productive or blowing up completely, right? So it really depends on how we see this thing, what we tell ourselves, and how we react, and that determines how it moves forward. So the pivot is used when you're triggered during a conversation or an interaction with a coworker. And I'll go back to my earlier trigger of, people having their back to me, right? So let's pretend I walk into my coworker's office and ask if they can talk, and they just keep their back to me and keep typing, right? So I do the extending grace thing. I speak a little bit louder, step a little bit closer, just in case they can't hear me. And they still don't turn around, but then I hear like, what, in response, right? So now I feel my trigger being activated, right? The tone of voice, the body posture, the fact that they still have their back turned to me. My heart starts to beat. I start to hear that negative story in my head about being disrespected. And I really start to form my response based on that perspective, right? That's my first gut inclination is, this is the story, this is what's happening, I need to give this reaction. However, before I do that, maybe I decide to pivot, right? So let's look at the steps. First, I'm going to take 2 steps back from my coworker's space. This provides me with physical distance, and it's a physical cue to your body to let you know you're moving away from the triggering situation, okay? So sometimes your body feels things before your brain does, right? So your body starts to react to something before your brain has quite caught up to what's happening, kind of like fight or flight, right? So when this is happening, when you're feeling triggered, take a physical step back, okay? Secondly, turn away from the office, walk back to your office, and then start to take deep breaths in through the nose, out through the mouth, and start to reframe your story, okay? So start to tell yourself some positive statements, ground yourself in the moment. I'm okay. This isn't about you, telling yourself to stay calm. And this will start to help you reset your brain from that triggered state into that executive state, okay? And then third, after you've done the phrases, after you've done the deep breathing, you feel your body start to respond and calm down, then you start to focus on the new story, okay? Maybe they're busy. Maybe they had a tough morning. I can try again later. And that changes your perspective and allows you to approach the situation with a little bit more calm and focus, okay? Just a quick 3 steps. Take a step back, turn away, give yourself some deep breaths to settle, give yourself some grounding statements. I'm okay, this isn't about you, stay calm. And then feed yourself a new story, right? You're extending grace in this moment. You're Q-tipping, okay? Now, in terms of equity, okay, I do want to point out that sometimes, or while sometimes our triggers are based on a story we've created, like our own story based on our trigger that we've created about somebody else's motivations, sometimes, especially for those who identify as or who are perceived to identify as a member of a marginalized group, so this could be Black, Indigenous, person of color, this could be LGBTQ+, sometimes that disrespectful behavior can also be experienced as what we call a microaggression, okay? So microaggressions are these very subtle or indirect expressions of discrimination and fall into that type of, ongoing disrespectful behavior that I mentioned earlier. This means that sometimes the stories that we tell ourselves about why people are behaving a certain way towards us are true, okay? And especially for those, again, who are considered to be outside, quote unquote, the majority culture of society. So with these types of behaviors, pivoting, taking a step back is not going to be enough, okay? And we're definitely not trying to minimize that fact by saying, whenever something happens and there's an attitude towards you, you just take a step back, take some deep breaths, and it'll all work out, right? Addressing those types of behaviors is definitely going to require a more direct and in-depth approach that's definitely going to go deeper into the culture of the workplace, okay? And that's a really big task to consider and a lot of work to look at, taking on. The hope in presenting this tool today is that it can help support your overall mental health and wellness of those involved in, these and other types of workplace or difficult workplace interactions. All right, so let's go to our emotional state. You're doing great, Erica. Great job. All right, so the emotional state. So this, again, is about connection. So in the professional world, we all want to feel like we matter, whether we get informal acknowledgement or, there's a formal process of recognizing someone. We want an office culture that supports connection, and one that sees, an office culture that supports connection is one that will see more productive work relationships, right? But sometimes, though, this connection misses members of the work team. And when that happens, it can manifest in behaviors like team members withdrawing from group gatherings or refusals or pushback, when they're asked to work with other people, or even just constantly questioning or apologizing for their work, or even just their presence in the building. Again, while we are all bringing what Dr. Esther Perel calls the emotional dowry, which is just our own personal emotional baggage into our work situations, the atmosphere of our work environment also contributes to either positive or negative, or in positive or negative ways towards our feelings of connection. So when we're communicating with a coworker who's operating from the emotional brain state, it's a good first step to take the perspective of creating unity and harmony. So this can happen in a few ways. First, I think stating how important this person's role is within the team or within the company and showing appreciation for the work they do goes a really long way. But if you're going to do this, it has to be consistent, and it can't be connected to an ask or a task, right? So if the only time you acknowledge their work or acknowledge their role is when you're about to ask them to do something, that's not coming from a genuine place, and it's not going to feel genuine to the person who's hearing it, okay? And that outcome will also show the coworker that they really aren't genuinely valued, or that they're only valuable when there's something that is needed of them, okay? So first, tell them how important they are, do it in a consistent way, and do it genuinely and not connected to an ask. A very close second to showing consistent appreciation is highlighting specific ways. So the same way we talk about when we give praise to young children, we want to be specific about what it is that they've done that is unique and wonderful and amazing, versus just saying, a blanket statement of job well done. Generalized compliments really just kind of show a lack of thought, right? And then it doubles down on the idea that they're not really, truly, and genuinely considered a part of the team. And a third thing to consider is communicating choices to coworkers who are in an emotional brain state. It not only creates an atmosphere of connection, it also gives them an opportunity to exercise their power. So think about, emotional brain states being connected to a desire for connection. Often when you're in that emotional brain state, the person feels, or we feel, more tuned in to our victim state than our empowered state, right? So just again, like with young children, when we offer coworkers who are in that emotional brain state opportunities for them to provide input or suggestion, or to even just make choices about things that happen in the workplace, it helps support more of an empowered state versus everything always happens to me, or I can't do anything right kind of mentality. So allowing choices also shows a level of trust in their ability to contribute, which in turn drives connection, okay?
Yeah, and I would say Christine gave us an excellent example a little while ago of giving someone an opportunity to lead something, maybe something small, but just give them that opportunity so that they can have some success. It's, same as with children, and that's not to say we treat adults like we treat children, but the concept is the same. If you have someone who is maybe operating from an emotional state, they want that connection, they need to be validated, so let's let them have some success, some real true success, and give them that positive validation through that avenue. So Christine, thank you. That was a really good example you provided.
Absolutely. All right, guys, moving towards empathy. So we're talking about connection, and we're talking about empathy, emotional brain states. And the more, let's think about, okay, so the more connected an employee feels to their company, to their workspace, generally speaking, the more comfortable you become in vocalizing your needs and ideas. So the more connected you feel, the safer you feel, the more you feel like I can tell this group of people or this person what I need, right? These things that are really close and special to my heart. And these contributions go a really long way in revealing areas where more equity can be created within an organization, right? So tying it back into how mindful communication leads to more equitable environments. It also allows team members who are maybe experiencing inequity to share firsthand perspectives about how to approach building equity. And sometimes, you know, a lack of communication isn't really due to a lack of desire to be connected, but it has more to do with just feeling the differences between their lived experiences and those of their coworkers. So when we approach communication in a mindful manner, we increase our ability to really hear our team members and make changes that are based on, you know, their actual needs versus our own beliefs about what is needed, okay? One way that you can do this is to operate from a place of empathy. Empathy is the ability to relate to what others are feeling, not necessarily because you have the same experience, but as we'll see a little bit later, just because you can connect to that feeling or understand where they're coming from, take their perspective. Sometimes, though, when we think we are exhibiting mature empathy, we're actually showing immature versions of empathy. And so we'll look at a couple of those now. So the first is ignoring empathy, and that's when you tend to focus more on behaviors than connection. So no one is going to listen to you when you yell about that issue, right? So you're focusing on the behavior of yelling versus what they're saying to you when they're yelling, okay? Saving empathy is when we try to push others past their feelings instead of acknowledging them. So, you know, I know that bothered you, but things aren't like that now. It's all okay. Like, don't worry about it, okay? Punishing empathy is when we show upset towards the person who shared their feelings. So, you know, someone tells us something really deeply, and we say, you know, listen, everyone doesn't think like you do, and if you talk that way, it's going to upset them. Maybe you shouldn't talk about that, okay? So it's like, I understand that you feel this way, but you're going to make people upset, so just calm down. And then dismissing empathy is when we brush aside someone's behavior without acknowledging the feeling that prompted the behavior. So we're just like, you know, what was your goal in saying that? Like, just let it go. Let it go and get back to work, okay? So, Mary, I think you were going to pull up the video for us. And this is just a great video from Brené Brown that talks about empathy. But as you're watching it, I'd like for you to think about one takeaway from this video that you think applies to the work of creating equity through mindful communication. Like, how do you think this video connects to that idea?
Awesome. I'm going to take back the reins here for a second. So it'll let me. All right. For some reason, it looks like the video disappeared. So let me upload it really quickly. Don't we love technology?
I know. It's like it's always going to be a little something to keep it spicy.
Yes. Yes, we need to stay, you know, like involved. I love the spicy. That's
like
perfect.
Keep it spicy for us.
You know.
Yes.
Keep us all awake at this hour.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, so I am praying, crossing my fingers, doing a little hack dance that everyone will be able to hear this. Well, it's turned up all the way, so we should be good to go. You ready?
Yes.
Okay, let me stop this for a second. Some people can't see it. So it is possible, and this has happened before, that along the top of your screen, you might see some tabs. And you might see one that says Brené Brown. If you click on that tab, then sometimes you see it. Sometimes your system doesn't automatically click over to the presenting screen. Did that help? Benicia and Deborah? Brenda could see in here. Nope. I'm not sure why. It could be a bandwidth issue. Yep, we'll do a quick recap. So let me just finish. It's just a couple minutes, so hopefully you might be able to hear it now. You know, it's technology. Cross your fingers.
And we'll also have the link in the slides that we provide later if you want to go back and watch it.
Absolutely. Sympathy is, ooh, it's bad, no, not so much. Sympathy is a choice, it's a vulnerable choice. Or to connect with you, I have to connect that knows rarely, if ever, is an empathic response beginning with that. I had a, yeah. And we do it all the time. Because you know what? Someone just shared something with us incredibly deep. And we're trying to fill the line in there. I don't think that's verb. We're trying to fill the line in there. So I had a miscarriage. I think my marriage is fine. At least. John's getting kicked out of school. One of the things we do sometimes in the space of difficult conversation is we try to share something. Truth is, all right. I'm sorry that some of you couldn't see it or hear it, but we will, they said we will have the link in the handout that you'll be getting with the PowerPoint and your certificate, or yeah, with the PowerPoint, and then you'll get it with your certificate. Let me give the ball back.
I'm seeing a lot of positive reaction from that video. It's always one of our favorites. It really kind of brings it home and breaks it down. The at least statements for sure, yes. And, you know, the at least you can do this, or well, that doesn't make it better.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes, Denise, we can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, so I saw, like a lot of, it was powerful, great video. I think it was perfectly stated. In order for you to really understand and to hear someone when they're sharing something difficult or heavy or, you know, for you or to you, it really requires us to tap into our own feeling that identifies with that and tapping into our own hurt so that, or maybe not even our hurt, just an understanding of what it means or what it feels like to be in that space, right? Because then it gives us so many more opportunities, so much more latitude to really listen and to be receptive to what it is that they're trying to tell us. And so that for us is the connection between empathy and then mindful communication and really trying to build these equitable spaces in our workplaces. All right, Erica, we're ready for our...
All righty, we're gonna do another little quiz here. A few little quiz questions here. So if we're thinking about survival state, executive state, emotional state, we're going to look at a few statements and see where that might fall on the spectrum. So our first statement is, we are all in this together. And so do you think that that is a survival brain state, an executive brain state, the skill of empathy, or is that unity and the emotional brain state? See some answers coming in. So definitely unity and the emotional brain state. So I've seen a couple executive brain state. You could make the case for that, but this is really appealing to that emotional side of you, that connectedness of being together in something.
Right, right.
Okay. So next up we have, I can imagine how you must feel. Is this survival brain state, executive, empathy, or unity and the emotional brain state?
Nice.
The Brene Brown video really gave you the answer to this one.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so this is definitely empathy. This is the hallmark of empathy is, you know, putting yourself in someone else's shoes and imagining how they must feel. Okay, so next we have, I can pivot when triggered. Is this the survival brain state, the executive brain state, empathy, or unity and the emotional brain state?
So again, Erica, like you said, I can make cases for executive and survival. So the actual response, I guess, for us is the survival brain state. Like, when would you use a pivot? Is kind of where we're coming from. But also, if you're in that executive mind frame, you would be able to pivot yourself. Ideally, what we would want is to be able to not have to do the pivot, though. If you're in the executive brain state, like, you're able to hear and see somebody's reactions and immediately kind of understand, oh, I'm not taking this personally. You know, I'm already calm, like I'm not triggered at all, and just kind of going with that, you know, that brain state initially.
Yeah, so for sure the word trigger in this lends itself to survival brain state because that's activating, you know, your basic primal functioning there.
I want to be safe.
That fight, flight, or freeze reaction, depending on the situation. But yeah, hopefully we're pivoting out of that survival state into the executive brain state. Okay, and one more. And this final one is, I am focused and ready to listen and learn. So is this survival, executive, empathy, or unity in the emotional brain state?
Yes.
Awesome. You guys are correct. So for sure, yes, this is executive. This is, you know, this is where we want to be. We're focused, we're ready, we're listening, we're learning, we're open. All of those higher order thinking and functioning skills that we need to access as often as possible.
Right, right. All right. So now let's connect the dots, okay? So let's connect the dots between mindful communication and increasing equity among working professionals, or like in our workspaces. All right, so let's take a look at this image. And I want you guys to just think or share what the difference is, or what you think the difference is between equality and equity. Awesome. That's it. Everyone is getting what they need. So the point of equity is to find out what success looks like for an individual, and then providing them with what they need to reach those goals, okay? And Eric, I think I've popped over to the next slide, so I apologize for not letting you know that, where you have the definition. I just kind of looked up and noticed that. But so again, equality, all about giving every person the exact same thing, right? Equity is about learning what it takes for each individual to be successful, and then giving them what they need to be successful, not what you think they need, right? So the point of equity is to find out what success looks like for each person, and then giving them that specific thing, but you have to use mindful, empathetic communication. Equity requires listening to find out what those needs are and how to address them. So it means becoming self-aware enough to know what brain state you're in as an individual, to know when you're being triggered, why that question or that situation was triggering to you. all of this is a mindful process. So it involves taking time, to pivot, to breathe, to calm yourself, maintain your composure, to re-engage your executive brain, to examine and dissect the feelings that are really making it difficult to hear what this individual needs, right? Or what these individuals need or what they're trying to tell you. And so on the next slide, we have one more picture. And I want you to look at this picture and think about what the differences are between this one and the previous. Okay, so we have inequality, which is unequal access to opportunities. Then we have equality, which means evenly distributed, needs or resources. Equity means customizing tools. And then justice is fixing the system, okay? So it's not enough to simply do the work of equity, but it has to come from a desire to truly change the system that created the inequity in the first place. So communication is absolutely key, and mindful communication must be centered in order for true understanding and change to occur. It's not enough to simply just address the inequity, right? Which is an important first step, so we're not negating that at all. But it also has to push towards justice, because that's when we actually change the system to where the inequities don't exist. That is when we've affected true and lasting change. So when we mindfully engage the executive brain and we Q-tip, listening to understand becomes easier. Our focus gets a little clearer. Our desire to learn and our problem solving with other people become our primary motivators, right? Not defending ourselves, but learning and working together. Mindful communication aids in building relationships because as people feel heard and seen, you form trust. And trust is paramount when you're working towards equity and justice. The ones of us in this world who will benefit the most from equitable practices have to trust that when you share or when they share their thoughts or their ideas or their experiences, that they will be heard and that those with the power to do something about it will do so, but they'll do it in a genuine way, and that they'll do it in a genuine way. So mindfully speaking and listening, along with taking very actionable, targeted steps towards pulling down these systems, can and will make the difference in creating more equitable environments in our workplaces, in our fields, and in our world, right, overall.
Okay.
I know, like,
so,
here we go.
And I feel like we could keep going. We could just keep going and going and going. So we'll do a little recap here, and then we will do some question and answers. This is always our favorite part, to get to really interact and answer questions and have thoughtful conversations about this information. So just to recap what we've talked about this afternoon, tonight, because I know we've thrown a lot of information out at you. So we've talked about the brain state characteristics, and we talked about how they really affect the way that we communicate. And hopefully after you leave this, you'll can engage some of those self-awareness tools so you can think about, even if it's after the fact, that's a good first step of practicing mindfulness. But, after you've had a conversation, or you've had an argument, or you've had an experience or a conversation with another person, to kind of really think about what state you were in, what was your reaction, what was their reaction, and practice exercising that mindful muscle in your brain. Secondly, we've talked about some strategies to help you mindfully communicate with others based on their brain state, and certainly to reiterate, those tools are not to dismiss others' behavior that is truly disrespectful and hurtful and negative, but to give yourself some tools for handling those situations and those communications. And finally, we've hopefully we've connected the benefits of mindful communication in a manner of showing you how that can support equitable relationships. Let's see, got one more slide here. So here are just some points, you know, if you take 4 things away from this webinar, and those are to remember that each of us brings our emotional dowry, as Esther Perel says, into our work environment. We all have baggage. We all have experiences. We all have trauma to some extent. And so just being aware that we all are bringing that with us, and whether we realize it or not, that is always affecting how we are interacting with others and communicating with others. Secondly, mindfully communicating with our team members really honors this and allows each of us to show empathy towards each other when we're sharing information. Thirdly, strong work relationships are built when team members feel safe, connected, and heard within their work environment. Those are just the basic building blocks of relationships and team building. And so we want to always remember that in our work relationships and in our personal relationships. We all want to feel safe, connected, and heard with those that are in our lives. And then finally, keep in mind that safe, connected relationships create that safe space for tough conversations and overall growth, especially if there are cultural changes that need to happen within your workplace, or you know, big conversations, tough conversations that need to happen. We want to have those safe, connected relationships so that others feel that they have the ability to say what's on their hearts and minds, and know that you or those who have the power, as Denise said, to affect those changes are really ready to listen and to take others' opinions and perspectives and experiences into account as they make decisions and you know, move forward in your work. So again, you know, we talked about this at the beginning. If you are not familiar with ProSolutions training, check us out, ProSolutionsTraining.com. We have over 150 courses on early care and education, a wide variety of topics. We are always routinely on a monthly basis launching new courses. So those are available on our website. And we would love for you to take advantage of our partnership with Rasmussen with the articulation agreement if you complete our CDA or take any of our trainings, and as well as the tuition discount, which we are very grateful that we have the opportunity through Rasmussen to offer to our students. So certainly check us out. And Mary, I think we'll turn it back over to you for any questions. If you have questions, feel free to type them into the chat.
Yes, we do have a couple questions that I wrote down so we wouldn't lose them in the chat, because it was a very active chat. It was flying by at times, so it was hard to keep up. A couple of things that I want to answer first and foremost. So after this session, like I said, we will be sending an email out to all of those that attended live, along with a couple of things. You'll get a certificate or a link to a certificate that you can then download, you can save, and you can print, showing your participation in this session this evening live. Unfortunately, if you're listening to a recording only, we would not be able to provide you that certificate, but you still can enjoy the recording because it's awesome. The other thing that we'll include with that email is a copy of the PowerPoint that these presenters have graciously provided to you. So there'll be a PDF of that. So that amazing set of 4 images with the tree that just reminds me of the giving tree, and it's just so powerful. That is in there, so I did double check. And then we'll also include a link to the location of the recording. So tomorrow we'll be uploading this recording to what we call our guide page for early childhood education with Rasmussen. And so it's got other recordings for other sessions we've done this summer so far, and we will have the link uploaded to that tomorrow. So ideally, by the time you get the email, you will have access to that link. So then you'll be able to participate, or not participate, but check it out again. I guess you could say participate again. So someone said you do get a certificate link. Remember, that is something that comes in the email to you within 48 business hours. So all of this stuff will get to you by Monday night, and then you'll have the opportunity to save the certificate, rewatch this presentation, and get some additional information through the PowerPoint that you might have missed. So here's some questions. Are you ready?
We're ready.
Okay, so the first question, and I had already written it down to Denise when you had mentioned it, was,
nice.
Can you be in more than one brain state at a time?
So we've gotten that question almost
every time we've done this, yes.
Yeah, and I think I haven't gone back to actually look through to see like the conscious discipline information to see like what Becky Bailey actually says. But our basic consensus is that it is possible to be in more than one brain state at a time, maybe not executive, but emotional or survival. And I think like how she puts it in the program or in the literature is that children, there's like a hierarchy, like someone put in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you know, so you have to build from safety to connection to executive, right? So even if you're wanting to connect and you feel unsafe, you have to meet the safety before you can meet the connection, because there's no way to move into connection, like genuine connection where you can, you know, really build that trust or that relationship until safety is met. So you have to kind of do it in order. But we've agreed, you know, yeah, it's probably possible to be to have a need for connection and to also have a need to feel safe at the same time.
And also likely possible that you can very quickly fluctuate through, you know, through different brain states as well. So, for
absolutely.
Sure.
Yeah, maybe even in the same conversation, depending on what's happening to you.
For sure,
you
especially
know?
if you're trying to activate some of those, you know, you're very emotional and you know that you need to dig deep and activate some of those executive skills.
Mm-hmm. Well, here's an addition onto that. So if you're thinking about, you know, being in multiple brain states at the same time, could you know, thinking of what we do in education where you might be interacting with children and you turn around and interact with your coworker and then a parent walks in and you interact with that person, could that be a way that you might be in 3 different brain states at the same time?
I mean, I honestly think that if we're talking about, I think it's possible to encounter multiple different ones, you know, at a time. Like the parent may be in one state, coworker in another, child in another, you know, type of thing. I think it may get kind of tricky, and I really don't have the research or the information to say, yes, that's definitively possible, right? Because anything kind of is possible in the world, so to speak. But I think it's possible, like, if you're talking like, you know, you're transitioning between people, that you can encounter more than one brain state from a person at a time or at any given time, and being able to stay in your executive state to deal with all of those things, I think is the important part. And yeah, Christine's kind of hitting the nail on the head of saying what I'm trying to say. Like, I think sometimes, I think the brain states are a little bit more steady state, maybe not like, you know, they're constant, like they'll always be there, but maybe the fluctuation maybe isn't as quick as we think, you know. I think we're thinking of ingrained behaviors that happen over time. So kind of like how certain experiences shape our brains or trauma shapes our brain. Like there are things that kind of happen that require us to move from one state or shape our brains in one way or the other. And this is more of a way of understanding how individual people might be, or maybe how we most often communicate. Are we coming from an emotional state? Are we coming from a deep need of connection or a deep desire for connection? Or are we coming from a place where we need to survive or feel safe most of the time? And then finding ways to work around it that way. This is Denise's breakdown of brain states. So I'm just going to go ahead and qualify that with that, you know, but that's just kind of, you know, my layman's take on, you know, that question.
So this might be something that you talked about throughout the session, but how can you help others to be more mindful with you?
Erica, you want to take that one?
Sure, yeah.
I just talked so much, I have to drink water. So here
yeah, so I think that in the same way that we model the behaviors that we want to see from children, I think the same is true with mindful practices. So if someone consistently sees you engaging in mindful communication, so, you know, you are taking a breath, you are clearly, you know, if it's a tense situation, you know, clearly relaxing your shoulders and deep breathing, and, you know, they're seeing you do that, and they're also not seeing you react to them in an emotional state. So maybe it's someone who is coming at you from the survival or the emotional state, and they want to get that out of you, you know, just like children, you know, they want to get a reaction out of you, and it might be negative, and that's fine because they want a reaction. So if it is someone who might be just, you know, for whatever reason, a more combative type, you know, personality, if you're not engaging in that and you're not validating their behavior because you're using mindful practices, I think you are modeling that to them.
Yeah.
So that's just, you know, what comes to mind. Denise, I don't know if you have anything else to
I think,
add to that.
And I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing your name wrong. I was Christine, I'm hoping. But talking about the differences between asking for mindfulness from your children or your students versus colleague to colleague. And I think that just goes back to the fact that, you know, the older you get, the more hardwired your brain is. And so most of these techniques are about how to control yourself, which is really the only thing you have control over.
Exactly.
Versus trying to, you know, convince somebody else to do a thing or be a way. You know, this is more about how do I maintain my mental health and, you know, my composure and my behavior in a professional way. And then hopefully some of that rubs off. So I definitely, I'm 100% with Erica on that. Modeling and just not taking the bait, you know. You don't take the bait, maybe eventually they start to realize that, oh, these are good ways to be. And then, you know, they decide to jump on board. So
Thank you. Those are the questions that I have. I think I caught I think you guys did well catching things as you were going, but I think those are the real questions. Lots of amazing comments in the chat. Oh, here comes a large comment with a question.
Yeah, I know, I'm reading. Okay, and I'm sure everybody can see it too. Okay, this is awesome.
Yeah, it's a good question.
So, yeah, how do I facilitate the conversation when one staff member wants to address the inequity, but the other staff member is coming from an emotional brain state or getting defensive? It isn't fair to put off a conversation about equity, but if the other staff member isn't in the right state, then it won't be productive, ? No, it's okay that it's perfect, Deborah. No, sorry, it's wrong, it's perfect. So personally speaking, I think that it may do a little bit more damage to have the conversation when the other person isn't ready to have it than to maybe try to find another avenue for the person to express their feelings about inequity. I will also say that it may take losing that staff member because the inequity was not addressed in order for the person who can address it, who can do something about it, to realize the importance of listening. I don't think you can force anyone to listen until they're ready. I do think there are ways to approach conversations in general, just like in general life, when you want to bring a concern to someone you're in a relationship with. and framing, you know, using like the I statements and kind of speaking from what you need versus your emotions, or pinpoint, you know, finger pointing and things like that. So there's like conversational conflict resolution techniques that you can maybe try when you're having that conversation. But sometimes it might be okay to put the conversation on hold, or to set a time when the person can kind of know that this is happening, so that maybe they can put themselves in a calmer place to be able to sit down. I definitely don't know that blindsiding, this is tricky. I don't think that blindsiding is the best way, but you know, I know that these are hard conversations to have. They can be really difficult, you know, and I know this from personal experience. It can be really difficult to share how you feel about inequities, and then to hear, especially if you think of yourself as in a certain way, to hear that you have contributed or are perpetuating or part of an inequitable system. It's really hard to kind of hear that. So I would just say try to use general conflict resolution, you know, conversational techniques, I statements, speaking from, you know, what you need versus pointing fingers, and try to make it as, I was about to say accusatory-less, but I know that it's not a word. I don't know how to go backtrack that, but
non-accusatory, maybe. I don't know.
Here we come, 8:30. Okay, as non-accusatory as possible, but also making sure that the person who is sharing feels like they are sharing their truth, right? Because you don't want them to feel like, oh, I've got to censor myself or water it down, because part of the issue with the inequity is this culture of like niceness, you know, and like nice people don't do these things, or if I say something, I'm not being a nice person, or I'm being mean. And that, you know, is also part of the problem, right? So it's not necessarily a matter of being mean or telling them to water down their message, but saying it in a way that will hopefully, you know, find a common ground.
Yeah, and one thing I would add to that too is to, if you can help the person who might be resistant, or, you know, that's having the difficulty having the conversation, just understand that the person who might be bringing this topic, this conversation, this issue to light, that is really hard for them.
Yeah.
You know, they're digging deep, and that's a very courageous thing to do, and that's difficult for them to initiate that conversation. So I don't know if maybe that's a starting point of creating some level of empathy or understanding, to just, you know, talk about how
Christine again
in the first place to bring that to light.
Christine, about leading with empathy. Like, you're exactly right. That's exactly where empathy comes in, and being able to frame that in such a way that the person can hopefully find a way to identify with that or with what they're saying, framing what you're saying so that they can see that connection will hopefully help to bridge into the deeper conversation and start to, you know, affect the change that they're looking to have. Mm-hmm. Great question. Thank you so much.
Yeah, these are good questions. And I want to, as we're coming up to the end of our time slot, I want to be conscientious of all of these participants' time, as I know it's getting, you know, depending on where you are, it's either late or early. It's, you know, either morning or evening. So I want to thank you all for joining us today. Rasmussen does offer monthly training sessions. They're usually an hour long, so it's just a touch, just a taste of topics, and we have them once a month. So because you attended today's session, you'll likely get an email with the upcoming sessions for the winter quarter beginning in January. And we do have guest speakers, we do have faculty that present, and we really try to make the topics timely. And that's where this conversation came in with these ladies was, you know, this has been a really tough year and a half, and I don't think it's going to get it's going to still be hard for a while, and so and unique for a while. So it's really important for us to continue to talk about these subjects so that we don't forget and we can, you know, remind ourselves of the usefulness on a daily basis. So thank you so much to our presenters, to Denise and to Erica. Thank you very, very much. This was a great session. I appreciate you both. And we hope to have you come back and do a different sessions in the future. That would be great. And I want to wish everyone here a very good evening or good morning if you are in the Philippines. And enjoy the rest of your evening and or day. Thank you, and we hope to see you in the future.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you. Thank you. It's great to be here.